Hey everyone, Joe here. You're about to listen to the first conversation that I recorded for my podcast. This was with my good friend Karina Alce. She's currently doing paralegal studies and she's hoping to have an impact on the world through law. That's how she's hoping to change the world. And yeah, we ended up talking for about an hour and a half about COVID, politics, philosophy, religion, and many more topics. We recorded this conversation on March 11th, 2022. And honestly, this is one of the best conversations that I've had in a really long time. So I'm really glad we managed to record it for you guys. Now, please enjoy my conversation with Karina Alce. I have Karina Alce on my podcast. Karina, thanks for coming on.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We actually met a couple weeks ago through a mutual friend of ours, and I had heard from both this friend and her brother how intelligent and articulate and ambitious you were. And so we ended up meeting a couple weeks ago. You came to my place, and I'm really glad we had a very productive conversation, and I was hoping to start a podcast and you were willing to come on my show, and so I really appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, that's a really nice intro. Goodness, thank you.
So why don't you start by telling our listeners a little bit about your background, where you're from, what you're doing now.
Okay, so I am currently in a paralegal program and studying to be a paralegal, hopefully within the year. The other thing that I'm doing, I'm working in a group home. I'm 22 years old and, just trying to live life and push for our freedoms. That's what I'm doing.
That's good.
Yeah.
So why did you pick paralegal studies?
Well, because I did 3 years of child and youth care, and that was pretty amazing. But when you get out of school, sometimes you realize that what you took, even though it was great, may not necessarily get you a ton of jobs. So with it, I got a group home job, which I love, but it's definitely not paid as much as you need to be able to live. And so I decided to start looking into it, and I saw paralegal and I thought, oh wow, this would be a great idea to kind of merge the two together. And so a lot of youth, they don't actually have really good representation, and they're often taken advantage of in the legal system. And because with a paralegal, you can show up in court, especially criminal court, all the way up to a sentencing of 6 months. So I'm hoping to represent a lot of youth, because a lot of times, they'll get like the mischief or, dumb little petty things that they do.
Right. And
so I'm hoping to be able to represent them.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you're really hoping to help the youth with your studies?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. It's good. That's good.
Thank you.
All right. So I heard that this3 the first media appearance that you've done. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences?
For sure. So I did three media appearances, but really they were lives, and they were on Facebook, and they were with 2 people. One of them was called Cal and the other one was called Sebastien. So we actually met them by going downtown, me and my mom. We were in Ottawa, and we had actually seen many of their lives. They're like little influencers. And they had said that they were going to be in Ottawa that day. So my mom was like freaking out. She really loved, especially Cal, she like loved him. And so we were looking around, but we couldn't find them. And then we're like, you know what? We're just going to stop looking. We're just going to have a great day with the truckers. It's going to be wonderful. And then all of a sudden we just like crossed paths with them. And my mom was the one who realized it was them. And she was like, oh my God. And I've never seen her fangirl so much in my life. She's adorable. I love her to death. And then sparks just flew. They were really amazing people. And I started doing one of the lives with Sebastien because he was actually going to do a live about CAS. And in Quebec, they were actually talking about taking kids away from their parents if they weren't vaxxed. So then we were talking about how that's a terrible idea. And we talked about what group homes really looked like. And he even had a guest of a woman who was in a group home, her growing up. And then my experience with COVID with the kids. So that was the first live. The second one was they asked me to kind of shoot around and like look and like videotape. I did a little thing. And then the last one was me on the front line, because I got pushed by police, and I had filmed it and sent it to one of them, and he was really touched by it, and he asked if I could come on the live and kind of talk about what had happened. And so that was the other one, and there was usually around 5,000 viewers, so
Oh, wow.
it's quite fun.
Okay. So you mentioned kids being potentially taken away from their parents if
Yeah.
they're not vaxxed.
Yeah.
Was that on the Quebec side?
It was on the Quebec side. I believe
Okay.
it was like a bill that they were trying to like introduce, but don't quote me on it.
Right.
But I do know that there was something going on where they were trying to get, basically, if your parent doesn't vaccinate you, then the state should take over. So then we were showing what happens when a state takes over your kid, and it's not a good thing.
So you were showing...
Yeah, so basically, like, because I work in a group home, I was like talking about what it looks like when a state takes over, or when the government takes over and tries to raise your kids, because most of the kids that I have, they didn't ask to be in that situation, but a lot of times they had to be taken out of the home because it was more dangerous than if they come in our group homes. But if you've ever worked in a group home, you know that group homes are not a walk in the park. And so, especially during COVID, there were some things that the ministry was telling us to do that was just absolutely disgusting. Like, for example, like some of our kids, if they came from a different group home and we couldn't like test them or really confirm, they had to go get a COVID test, but then they had to stay in their room for 2 weeks with a mask and not allowed to talk to anybody. They had to stay in their rooms the whole time. They never got sunshine. They never got physical activity outside. They were stuck in their room, and then even us, we couldn't talk to them because it could have transmitted COVID, and because we didn't get the tests back. So these kids were stuck in their rooms like animals for 2 weeks straight. Like, they wouldn't even do that in solitary confinement, and yet we were doing it to kids who have already been traumatized.
Yeah. Sounds like they don't have the kids' well-being as their top priority,
No. Well, the mental health, absolutely not. All they're thinking about is, COVID, COVID, COVID. And I'm like, it's the sniffles to them. Like, if they got COVID, they'd get maybe a little sick, So why are we keeping them 2 weeks in their room? Like, you can clearly see that they have no signs or symptoms of COVID. They're fine. And if people are really that scared to be working there, then maybe don't work on the front lines if you're that terrified. Just a thought. A suggestion, really.
Yeah. Well, I heard that unvaccinated kids actually have a higher chance of survival after catching COVID than vaccinated adults,
Yeah. Well, the issue is, even in my group home, this is another kind of messed up thing that they did and are still doing currently, which is not accepting any kids that are unvaxxed. So if you are a child and you've just been taken away from your abusive home, and usually our home is like on the bottom tier, we get like the quote unquote worst kids, which I hate saying because there's no real bad kids. They just have really shitty files and probably have a lot of trauma. And so, but we get the ones that all the other group homes don't necessarily want. But let's say they're getting taken out of their home and we're the only ones with a bed left because we have 8 beds available and 5 different homes. Well, they will not let them in our home unless they're vaccinated. So I don't know what they're supposed to do with the kids if they have nowhere to go.
Right. Yeah. Sounds pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's quite awful. Especially knowing that, okay, like being vaccinated or not vaccinated, there's a very slim difference. So what is the point when a child is just trying to get away from abuse? Like, you have to think about the pros and cons, and we've stopped doing that. It's like, COVID rules supreme on everything.
Right. Yeah.
That's not a thing. Well, I mean, it is a thing for most, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Seems like everyone's pretty afraid of the COVID,
Oh, yeah. The terrible COVID that I've gotten twice.
Oh, yeah.
And have been fine with. But,
So do you think the people in charge, they're actually afraid of COVID, or it's just a power play for them?
In the group homes?
Yeah.
I think they're honestly scared.
Okay.
If I'm being legit, because one of them is like, she's a little wacky. And I shouldn't say this because she's kind of my boss, but she won't know. But definitely, like, I personally did not want to be vaccinated. And so I just let her know. I'm like, listen, there's not enough information about this. I'm going to wait. I never even said no. I'm just like, I'm going to wait and see and kind of, test the waters and look if anyone starts dropping like flies, then I probably won't get it. But if everything was good in like 15 years, then sure, maybe. And she was so mad at me. She's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, no problem. But like was pissed because it wasn't the time where you were like forced vaccination or lose your job. It was just like you could get it if you wanted to.
Right.
And so she could not understand how I didn't want an experimental vaccine. That couldn't, like, it didn't correlate in her head. And I was like, well, listen, I just don't want it. Who cares? But I definitely think they're very scared because one person even told me they went to go see her and she moved like 10 feet backwards. I'm like, yeah, no, she's
oh, wow.
on another dimension.
Right.
But yeah,
almost like she's possessed, you know.
Literally. But the issue is too, like, they don't even come visit the group homes. They don't see what kind of state it's in or what's going on with the kids. Like, they have no, I'm sure if you ask them like what's going on right now, they'd have no idea. So I've never even met them and I've been working there for almost 2 years.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that can change sometime in the future for the sake of the kids, you know.
I hope so. I didn't listen. Because the issue is, too, they wouldn't let the, like, so let's say if you had a youth in the home and a parent would come to visit, the parent wasn't allowed to give the child a hug because of transmission. But imagine if you're a kid trying to rebuild a relationship with your parents, or some of our kids, to give in context, are 9 years old. Like, these are not 17-year-olds with, like, knives and stuff. And okay, maybe
right.
sometimes. But, you know, most of the kids that I was watching, they're 9, 10, 11 years old. You need a hug every day. You need to know that you're loved. And then they finally see their parents after 3 months, because a lot of times, like, during those times, we stopped all visitations because of COVID. Then they finally started letting them happen, and you're not allowed to give your mom a hug. No way. I'm sorry. I was like, I see a fly in the other direction. Go right ahead. Like, am I going to stop that? No. Because you know what? I find it's better to live a shorter life with a lot of love and caring than to live a very long, depressive life alone. But, you know, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, no hugs from your parents, 2 weeks alone in your room. Can you really call that living, you know? Like,
no.
Yeah. Okay. I heard you did a interview with some quote-unquote mainstream media outlet, TVA Nouvelles.
Oh my god. Yeah, I did. That was another one. On this convoy, it was a lot of fun. So we go to Ottawa downtown almost every single day of the convoy. I think we missed total 4 days out of like the 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, me and my mom were intense. We loved it. It was a very fun time. If you didn't go, you missed out on so much. It was really wonderful, a joyous place. But as we were there one day, TVA Nouvelles was like walking around their little mic that was on the stick of like 500 meters away. Oh. And the person has a little mask on. And then he comes up to me and he tries to ask me, like, how do you feel that the police officers are going to move in soon, or blah, blah, blah. And this was like at the beginning of the convoy. So I knew he was just trying to like rally up, like to try to get me angry or something and try to clip it out. So really I just stayed super calm and I was like, well, the reason I'm here, and he didn't ask, but I was just like, the reason I'm here is for the kids. And I was like, I'm tired of them all having masks on their face when we can go to restaurants and sit down and you can take it off. And I was like, we're here to stay. They know we're here to stay. And that's pretty much it. And so out of everything that I said, and I was probably a little bit longer, but out of everything I said, they clipped it like to the smallest possible part they could have. And it was just like, we're here to stay. And I was like, well, I mean, he's not wrong. We are here to stay. But, you know, everything else, I was like, my brother even said, I know they're not going to play the part about the kids because that plays, like, not plays on emotion, but that comes to trigger an emotion on a lot of people that, you know, kids are stuck for 8 hours a day with a mask on their face and not allowed to talk to their friends when you can go out to a restaurant and sit down and take your mask off. Yeah. Something doesn't add up here.
Strikes a chord. Yeah. So you think they were trying to get you riled up?
I think so, because the thing that media does a lot, and a lot of people don't know this unless you've actually seen it, is that they try to question you in ways that may make you sound insane or upset or, you know, and instead of actually airing their questions with what they asked you and then your response, they oftentimes just take your response out of context, will clip it the way that they want, and then make a montage of like, look at all of these angry protesters, like they're swearing, they're this, they're that.
Right.
And yet half the time I remember some people were swearing because they're like, stop fucking lying, like start telling the truth, like instead of, because some of them were filming in an aisle where there was nothing because the police had blocked it off, and they're like, this is what the convoy looks like. I'm like, sweetie, we're over here, like change an angle and you'll literally see thousands upon thousands of happy people, kids, parents, moms, Like, there was indigenous people. There was LGBTQ flags being freaking hung everywhere. Like, people did not see these things because the media did not want to show it. They did not want to show unity. And that's the thing. It didn't matter if you were Christian, Muslim, Black, white, Hispanic. It did not matter. You could be white collared, you could be blue collared. We were all in this together, and we were all just saying we want to be free. We want to make our own decisions when it comes to life. We want to be able to, you know, because so many people are like, oh, you just want to go to the restaurant. No, I don't care about going to the restaurant. I used to work in a restaurant. I'm sick and tired of eating at a restaurant. It is not about the restaurant. It is your right to choose what you want to put in your body. And I find it very ironic that half the people saying this are the same people saying my body, my choice when it comes to abortion. But yet when it comes to this, no government should have all ruling on your body.
Right.
How did this happen?
Yeah. Not a very consistent philosophy.
No, not usually. But
okay.
You know, it's all good.
Yeah. So why do you think the media is trying to distort reality so much?
To keep people in boxes and afraid. The more you think you know and the more they show you, it's all about propaganda. And the issue is the more people watch media, they really still think that COVID is killing billions of people and we're all going to die soon. And, you know, but I'm like, how did we have a convoy for 3 weeks with no social distancing, no masks, and a bunch of hugs, and not a single person got sick?
Right.
But we've stopped focusing on that. And I find the very interesting thing is when the police raided and there was people getting squished, there was an indigenous woman who got trampled by a horse. That video was circulating on Facebook and Facebook took it down. Why? Isn't that media? Isn't that news? But yet the media was trying to show that she didn't in fact get trampled by a horse. I says, what? Excuse you, this woman literally had a tear in her shoulder, I believe, because the horse trampled her. She was like a little old lady. And they're trying to say that someone like threw a bicycle at the horse. Yeah. I was like, you mean her walker? The one you trampled on? Sorry? I don't know. They do this because, well, one, they're paid by the government. If you didn't know this, you should know this. That the media is 100% paid by the government. So whatever they're telling you, it is coming from the government. It has nothing to do with, you know, actually fact-checking and people. If you wanted to see what was going on in the convoy, look at people's lives. Go on. Come downtown and look with your damn eyes, especially the ones living in Ottawa. You have no excuse not to come. People saying like, oh, they were hating on people with masks. No, we weren't. My brother did on purpose to talk to every single person with a mask on their face and say hello, and none of them answered us. Why? Because you're angry. You're angry at us for who knows what reason, because you think we're spreading something, yet no one has died. So really, maybe wake up and stop listening to what they're trying to sell you and start looking around and noticing, maybe I've been bamboozled.
Yeah. It seems critical thinking is in short supply these days.
Very much so. Yeah, sometimes, which is surprising because I'm like, listen, you just had to look. Like, I get the first week or the second week or even the first month, 6 months, 7 months, whatever. I get it. But afterwards, when people were literally saying within the beginning, I think they're going to come out with like this plan. And there was things that were documents that were leaked that were showing all of the lockdowns that were going to happen. And every time it happens, people were like, well, you wouldn't have known. I'm like, sweetie, I literally knew. So I stopped getting my hopes up. I knew we were going into lockdown. People are like, oh, the vaccines are coming. I'm like, it's not going to change a thing. Once you say yes once, they're going to in the ass as much as they possibly can. Yeah. Until someone actually says, no, that's enough. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's what the convoy was. It says, no, it's enough. I'm not doing this anymore.
I don't know if you heard the Joe Rogan controversy like a month or two ago.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so Joe Rogan's like the king of podcasting,
yes,
right? And
yes.
He has a Spotify exclusivity deal that he got for $100 million. I think it was last year or something like that. And, you know, people were getting a little bit uncomfortable because he was talking to doctors that didn't agree with the narrative.
Oh, no.
Right? So I think Dr. Robert Malone was one.
Yes.
And there was someone else too. But basically, I mean, what Joe Rogan's always tried to do is kind of get to the truth and like, not, you know, BS people kind of thing, you know? And so Neil Young, he's a artist. He basically gave an ultimatum to Spotify. He's like, listen, if you don't take Joe Rogan and his misinformation off the air, like, pull me out.
Ciao, bye.
Yeah, basically. And then a couple of other artists followed suit. Okay. And so, you know, it ended up being like, I think 3 or 4 artists, maybe more, you know.
Yeah.
And then Joe Rogan posted a video on Instagram. And he basically said, he's like, listen, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what's actually going on.
Yes.
I'm not saying I agree with everything my guests come on my show, but they're the medical experts. I'm just trying to listen to them. I'm just trying to make sense of the situation.
Exactly.
And in that video, it's like 11 minutes. It's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said, there's been so many conspiracy theories, quote unquote, conspiracy that have been proven to be right.
Exactly.
Right? Like originally you couldn't say that the virus leaked from a lab in Wuhan.
Yeah.
Being branded a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist.
Or racist.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. That's a little,
right, yeah. And now it looks like it might have actually have been the case. And,
yep.
Vaccine passports used to be a conspiracy theory. And I think he listed like 4 theories like that. And so,
minimum.
Right, yeah.
Minimum.
Oh, yeah. Like, you can make a long list like that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, just going back to what you said, it's like some people have been kind of pounding the alarm since the beginning. And, a lot of people have just kind of been not listening to them. But now it's like, okay, well, maybe those people were onto something,
Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think I don't blame people for not waking up, because it must be hard after 2 years. Like, imagine to yourself, your grandma had cancer and she passed away all by herself, because they told you that COVID could kill everybody, so you couldn't go see her as she's passing away.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that. That is a trauma that the government has now put on you. So if you start to believe the other side and you start waking up and saying like, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad. I'm not saying that COVID didn't kill anyone, because I know it did. Like, that is factual. But the thing is, the flu used to kill a lot of people too, and no one ever spoke about it. No one cared. It was like, oh, it's a flu, you died. And most people didn't even know you could die of the flu. But yet we had ticking numbers of COVID deaths. But I understand people not wanting to wake up, because it's a scary realization that because the media told you to fear something so much that you feared it. And now you have to deal with everything that you've done within the past 2 years that you'll never get back. Because these people are never getting that back. Those 2 years where you refused to hug your mom or your grandma, or you refused to, you had to wear a mask for everything, or you had a christening and, you had 2 people there. You decided to have your wedding with, 5 people. Some of those memories are going to be great, and that's wonderful if you had some. But I'm sorry, I would never not see my mom. That's not going to happen. Me and my mom are 2 peas in a pod. If you would tell me, Karina, you can't see her for 2 years, I'd say go fuck yourself. Very nicely, but absolutely not. Yeah. But those people have to deal with that afterwards and be like, oh, okay. So I think there's a lot of trauma that they're going to have to go through, or a lot of things that they're going to have to realize, which, some people are just not ready for, and some people probably will never be ready for that.
Yeah. Reminds me of the red pill, blue pill analogy from the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to live the rest of your life in blissful ignorance, or do you want to find out how deep this rabbit hole really goes? Alice in Wonderland, So yes, it can be pretty scary to realize some of the things that are true, but I think truth is an important enough value to really set atop your hierarchy of values. And it's like, no matter what's true, like that's what we're going for, and that's what we should be going for.
Yeah.
People that are trying to obfuscate the truth, or like those, I don't know, those aren't the people we want on our side. And anyway. Yes, I don't know, there's a lot of parallels between, I think, the Logos, right, the Word of God, and truth. And Jordan Peterson often talks about how there are some instances of the literal truth and the metaphorical truth just kind of merging like that, and he thinks that's one of those instances. And he thinks it's impossible for, I think he was asked a question on a recent podcast that he did, and the guest basically said, if you had to lie, what was it? Like, if you had to lie for the benefit of mankind, would you do it? Or something like that. And the answer is, well, that's impossible, because the truth is always the best thing for mankind.
Exactly. Because then people start to figure it out. And I think that's what's going on right now. Like, when we look at the World Health Organization, I've been in this rabbit hole for a very long time. I am the quote-unquote Alice in Wonderland. I've gone a little kooky. But in the best way possible, But I've definitely been down the rabbit hole. But I was down the rabbit hole 2 years ago when this was like first hitting. And so I'm here like, are people really going to fall for this? I was kind of waiting just to see how far are we going to take this. And then it got to the point that I'm not allowed to leave my country. That's a little fucked up. But I was like, listen. And then there's people that are okay with that. They're like, well, it's your choice. I'm like, no. Listen, there's a difference between, actual consequences to our actions because of our choices and consequences imposed by the government. And I believe with the vaccine, it's consequences imposed by the government. Because if I get a vaccine, then my choices should be, it's either I get the vaccine and I'm protected from COVID, or I don't get the vaccine and I'm not protected from COVID. That should be your consequence, that you're not protected from COVID. But yet we know that COVID is not that dangerous. So if I'm not protected from COVID, I'm okay. I will take that. There's no issue. But now the government has had to put more pressure on you to get it because they know that the actual outcome of your choice is not that deep. And yet people don't want to admit to that. They're like, well, it's just your consequences to your actions. I was like, no, consequences should be that I get COVID. And I've already had COVID twice. So I'm like, listen, they're not that bad consequences. Those are natural consequences. But when the government's telling you can't go to a restaurant, sorry, I'm failing to see your logic of, oh, you chose not to get vaccinated. Okay, I didn't choose not to go to a restaurant, though. I chose not to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
That's very different.
Well, then the counter-argument would be you're putting other people in danger if you're not vaccinated.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How? I thought the masks and social distancing were working so well. Yeah. What happened to that? Oh, my God. I really thought... No, I'm kidding. I never thought that either. Jeez. And I'm sorry, but look at Florida. Or Israel is my favorite example because they're up to 4 shots now. They had the passports before us, yet everyone acts like Israel doesn't exist. I'm like, sweeties, it's not hard to look at different data and different documents in different places. When I started seeing Australia and they started putting camps up and putting people because they were sick, and then 2 or 3 boys, I believe, escaped, and the entire police force was looking for these 3 boys because they could potentially be infected with COVID, I said, something's wrong here. It's not hard to see. Something is wrong. I don't care how much you don't want to see it. Something is wrong. If you barely have a fever, they're putting you in a camp, and because you've escaped it, the whole police force is looking for you for the sniffles.
Right, yeah.
Goodness. But no, you're right. Wear your N95 outside and don't talk to anyone for the rest of your life. No problem. Purell your hands to obliteration. No problem. No issues.
Yeah. All right. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the Pfizer clinical trial document that
the beautiful 8 pages?
Yeah. 9 pages, So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what those documents are and what's in them?
I have attempted to look at them, but I am no scientist, I'm no doctor, and I hope to make that very, very clear. I'm just someone who uses her eyes and decides to go, something's wrong. I am more political as well, so I do believe this is more political. But after looking at 9 pages of side effects, I thought to myself, there's something very, very wrong. And my mom is a pharmacist technician. And so anytime you get a new medication, and for all those like me who have been stuck on a lot of meds, you know that you usually get a page within the package, right? There's a page that comes with it, and it shows you the potential list of side effects. Right. Most of the time, those are around 1 pages. 1.5 pages if you can flip it around. Yeah. Birth control is one of the ones with the biggest pages, letting all those girls know out there. So you should really check that. But to come up with 9 pages of side effects, right, especially that they wanted to bury this for, I believe it was 75 years?
Yeah, until 2097.
2097, yeah, okay. Why?
Pretty crazy.
Little sus there, Pfizer. Little sus. But you do you, boo. But 8 pages, that's a lot of pages. And if you're not concerned about that, or if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to go check it. Because, I know one of the biggest one, which was myocarditis, which a lot of people didn't talk about. But when we started seeing athletes fall on the floor, they're the healthiest of the healthy. And you know that they have to be, quote unquote, jabbed to be able to play. And then they all start falling like flies. That was my first number 1. And then second, when you see healthy athletic people be in the hospital because their hearts are malfunctioning, there's something wrong. Yeah,
I just wanted to bring this up because I checked some of the biggest mainstream media in Canada. CBC News, Global News, the Globe and Mail. They didn't cover it.
No.
They didn't cover it.
No, because Ukraine's happening right now.
Yeah.
And that's what you should be focusing on. World War III, we're all gonna die, part fucking 10. Like, if you haven't gotten the narrative that we're all gonna die yet, I don't know what else they're pushing. But they're constantly pushing, stay in fear, stay in your home, stay locked up, and don't move. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to the first thing I said. No. Thank you so much. I appreciate whatever you're saying. No, thank you. I prefer living a short life filled with love and happiness and being able to have these kind of podcasts and talking to people that I care about and giving a hug and loving people rather than spending 50 years solitary in a basement with my hood over my head with like fucking 10 stacks of cereal and toilet paper. Okay, I'm not gonna do that. I'm sorry, I'm refusing that and I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, well, I feel like if we're not afraid, we're very hard to manipulate. They constantly have to sell this meme that we have to be afraid of everything that's in pandemic, World War III, Russia, whatever.
Exactly.
It's always one thing after another. You know?
Always.
And, if you just turn off CNN, you can just choose not to be afraid.
Absolutely. Literally turn off, like, if you're someone who is suffering from chronic fear, my best advice to you, turn off your TV. Okay? Just do it. Just take it off. Don't listen to the dumb news that tells you the same story with 7 different channels. That's how you should know too. If you're hearing the same channel, same news on every different channel, there's something wrong. There's just something wrong. So turn it off. Go for a fucking walk outside with your dog, without a mask preferably, so you can sniff oxygen. That's good for you. It's actually really good for you. I can guarantee it. Go for a nice walk with your dog or your cat or your rabbit. I don't care what you have. Or alone. All good. And look with your eyes. I encourage you to just look with your eyes and enjoy the moments that you have, because you know what? Life isn't guaranteed. You could die tomorrow by being hit by a bus. You don't choose. So, might as well live life happily.
And it's not just that every single channel has the exact same news. It is that, but it's actually worse than that, because I don't know if you saw the video. It was basically people reading, the news from a bunch of different channels, and they were basically saying the exact same words. Like the exact same words.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. This is the society we live in. These people read scripts.
Yeah.
Politicians, journalists, they're handed a script, and that's what they have to feed us, and that's why so many people are so afraid of everything. It's
I think one of the people that was like the health prime minister of Canada or something along the line, she was on the news, and there was a hot mic moment where she's like, I don't know, I just read whatever's in front of me. Like, that should be concerning.
Oh man.
Or Dr. Tam. This is my favorite one. If you didn't wake up after this, I'm sorry, my hope has been lost for you. When she said, have sex with a mask, I lost it. I was there one night scrolling and I saw her say, have sex with a mask. I was like, listen, if anyone's taking this woman seriously, I can't help you. You're past the point of return. I don't know what to tell you. I can't. It's where we are.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say about the clinical trial documents. So I ended up looking for, again, some of the more mainstream media in Canada, and a lot of them didn't cover it. CTV News had one article, right? And they basically said, oh, it's not such a big deal. And they made a comparison that I thought was interesting. They basically said, listen, when people get, any new vaccine or anything like that, they have to report any, because those 9 pages, there were adverse side effects, right?
Yes.
And so they were basically saying, listen, anything that happens to someone after being injected, like, we have to report it.
Yes.
So they had one of the adverse side effects for some vaccine that they used in that article was a kid swallowed a penny. Right? So swallowing a penny was an adverse side effect of that vaccine. But I'm just thinking, I'm like, well, swallowing, like, there's so much distance between swallowing a penny and, all those 9 pages, neurodegenerative diseases and autoimmune diseases and chromosomes being deleted. Like, it's not just, like an accident happened or anything like that. Like, it's, I don't know, it seems to be more related to the vaccine than just swallowing a coin,
And there's a lot of shady stuff too. A lot of times they didn't even want to hear about your adverse side effects. They didn't want to hear anything about it. Doctors are not allowed to doctor anymore. And I know this firsthand because I have, technically, I guess, like, I'm immunocompromised, if you will, because I have what's called ulcerative colitis. So I have my own, like, GI specialist, which is gastrointestinal specialist. And I called my doctor first and asked about the vaccine. She did not have enough information, so she's like, talk to your GI. I had to wait 8 months to speak to my GI. And when I finally did, she was like, yeah, I get the vaccine. And I was like, okay, but do you have like data? Like, I'm kind of nervous because last time you told me to take this pill and it didn't work. And then you told me to do this and it didn't work. And then you told me to do this and I got worse. So can I have evidence? Can I have data? Can I have anything? And she goes, well, it's better to have an adverse side effect than it would be to have COVID. And I looked at her and I was like, I've had COVID twice. So please try again, because I'm genuinely asking you, what like, if I got this vaccine, like, what could potentially happen? Like, I'm genuinely scared, and I have a lot of anxiety as well. So I was like, I don't, like, this is not something that I necessarily want, but I'm genuinely asking because maybe I've gone crazy. Who knows? Like you said, truth prevails. She could not give me an answer. She just kept saying, well, it's better than getting COVID. And I said, lady, I've had COVID. Are you, like, can you hear me? Are we good?
Right.
And that's where I saw, like, she's not doctoring. She's not actually taking her patient as a patient. She's just like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I think you should get the vaccine. And I was like, but you haven't even taken my case into consideration.
Yeah.
You've done nothing. But cool. No problem. Let's get the vaccine. Fuck that. No, thank you.
Well, it's like, if you've had it twice and your body already knows how to fight it, maybe getting the vaccine isn't worth it for you, you know?
No, I don't think it's worth it for me. I don't think it's worth it for many people because I think COVID is the sniffles. Like, Could it affect you? Yes. If you're morbidly obese, which honestly, that's the thing too. When the government told you to close down, don't go to the gym, don't move out of your house, and support local by eating 5 poutines a week, and you've gained 45 pounds, you are not helping yourself. I don't care if you put fucking 20 N95s in your face. You are morbidly obese, and that was one of the comorbidities. But fun fact, you need 4 to actually be considered potentially could die of COVID. 4. That's a lot of comorbidities here. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. But, you know, you do you, boo. No problem.
Okay, well, now I want to switch to a different topic. I want to talk about COVID, but more from a philosophical angle. So I have a couple of topics here. We might go through all of them. Well, we'll see. We'll see. So, first one seems to me like there's very tight links between language and our perception of reality, right? Because we use language to communicate to each other how the world seems to us, right? And you know, if you were to ask someone like Robert Anton Wilson, who's an author who passed away, but if you would have asked him, you know, he believes that because we filter reality through our nervous systems, we're never actually in contact with reality, right? We always have to deal with an interpretation that's given to us by our senses. And so there's this very meaningful distinction between our perception of reality and reality. And I think language offers a pretty good window into that. And I feel like that's something a lot of people don't really realize. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have to be careful with the words that we use. And so, anyway, so for instance, you know, sex reassignment surgery, that's what it used to be called. Mm-hmm. Now it's called gender affirming surgery, right? We're affirming your gender, right? So you kind of have the ideology baked into the language.
100%.
Right. And so I think that's, you know, I'm not taking a stance as to, you know, the politics of that. I'm just saying that the language
has changed.
Right. Yeah. And we have to be careful because I feel like, you know, if the definition of words are being changed and we can't understand each other as well, that's problematic. Yeah. Right? That's counterproductive. Yeah. And so anyway, so that was one example. There's another example that actually gets to my point a little bit more neatly. Anti-racism.
Oh my god.
Okay, right. So
yeah, you can't. You're racist unless you're anti-racist. And I said, sorry? You're racist unless you're anti-racist. What does that mean? Well, if you see racism, you have to speak out. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock, because racism is shitty. But they're like, but like it's in everywhere, so I just have to talk all the time about race. I'm like, no, sorry. Nope. I don't see it in the menu at Saint Spa. That's my bad.
Yeah. So one of the leading voices today in quote-unquote anti-racism is Ibram Kendi. He wrote a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist, and he gets paid a lot of money to give speeches at university campuses and basically trying to teach people how, you know, he think we should act. And so anyway, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because in his book, there's this false binary that's presented, right? So he says, you can't just not be a racist. There's no such thing as non-racism, right? You have to be, you're either a racist or you're anti-racist, right? But then there's this whole package that comes with his definition of anti-racism, right? Because for him, for Mr. Kendi, racism is whenever there's an inequitable outcome between people of races. Like, that's an instance of racism, right?
God.
If there's not as many, black engineers as there are white engineers, with respect to the general population, like, that's racist. That's intrinsic, systemic racism, right? And you have to speak out against it, and that's how you should be an anti-racist, right? And I'm not, like, this is not a caricature of his argument. Like, that's legit what he's arguing for. And a lot of people think he's right. I don't actually happen to agree with him. But the point is, there's a total annihilation of any concept of nuance, right? There's no middle ground. There's no gray area. You're either racist or anti-racist. And to me, that's kind of dangerous because, well, I don't know. I feel like there's so much complexity in the world, in human beings, economics, politics, science. Everything is so complex. To imply or pretend that there's no nuance whatsoever in anything, I think is pretty silly. And so, anyway, all that to say, anti-vaxxer, again, the term I think totally gets rid of any nuance whatsoever. And I think that's problematic because, if you don't go with the narrative, if you don't go with the vaccine, according to Merriam-Webster, you can have had your vaccine, but you're simply opposed to regulations or laws. That makes you an anti-vaxxer, right? You've had your COVID-19 vaccine, but you're against the laws mandating them, you're an anti-vaxxer. I mean, that's kind of silly. I mean, the word doesn't really mean anything at that point.
No.
Seems to me to be counterproductive.
Well, the thing is, I find the more they use words, the less value they have. Like, racist is one of them. And I think it really pisses me off because, I have, and I'm going to say this, I have many black friends and everyone's like, well, that doesn't make you not racist. Okay, no problem. But it honestly does because I wouldn't be able to be friends with someone who is black if I thought I was superior to them. Right. That doesn't make any sense. If I wanted them dead simply because of their skin color, because that's what racism is. Yeah. It's believing that someone should not exist or is inferior, does not exist, hate them, whatever, simply based on your skin color. That's what true racism is. And that's fucked up. Yeah. And I don't agree with it. And I call it out if ever I would see it. I haven't seen it because no one has ever said it to me, but I'd punch them if they did, right? Well, maybe not violence, but maybe a little bit. Who knows? But it's definitely not something that I would stand for ever. Right. However, to call every single thing racism, it loses its value. Yeah. I was talking to my friend, his name is Keith, and he's super for bringing Africa back together and the importance of Africa and, to kind of decolonize, which was very interesting to me because I was like, oh, what do you mean? And he's like, no, like open all the borders and make everyone speak the same language, which I thought was very interesting, but that's a whole other story. But he taught me so many different things, and I said, why do you think people use the word racist so much? And he explained to me that it's kind of a way to not look at oneself. If something happens to you, oh, it's racism. If this happens, oh, it's racism. You never actually have to look at, okay, you know what, maybe I didn't do a great job at that interview. Yeah, you know what, maybe there was a little bit of bias, but we're gonna get it the next time. And kind of look at what you can do instead of the world and what it does to you. Right. Yeah. Zero accountability for your actions. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And using the word racist 700,000 times. Now when I hear the word racist, I roll my eyes. Or homophobic or xenophobic or whatever other phobic, Islamophobic, this phobic, that phobic. Like you put phobic in front of any word and that's what you get used because I don't agree with what the government's doing. Yet you don't agree either because the last time I checked, Black Lives Matter marched in front of where? The Capitol. They're against government too. And then when we say, well, the government is overstepping, you're like, no, I trust the government now. Oh, now you do. Interesting. I'll remember that next time. No problem. Yeah. And then 10 seconds later, it's defund the police. Exactly. But then we need the police to get all the convoy out. Right. Pick a side. That's all I'm asking. Just pick a side. Just be consistent, Yeah. Well, there was this German philosopher, Nietzsche. I think it was from the 19th century or so. And he believed that Christianity helped discipline the European mind in that it allowed everyone to share a similar perception of the world and basically paved the way to the Enlightenment and beyond, And I think that's right. And I feel like if we're changing the definitions of our words mindlessly like that, we're kind of going the wrong way. Maybe shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit, I feel like we should give
higher value or importance to the definitions that words have. And like you said, not just throw words around like racism or sexism willy-nilly, you know, just to discredit your opponent, you know. It's not going to do anyone any favors, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest difference that I've seen within the recent years of like talking points, or if you go like left and right or conservative, liberal, however you want to look at it. I think one of the biggest things I've seen is the attack on character instead of the attack of the fact or whatever the person is actually saying. Yeah. As soon as you're like, well, listen, you know, this is going on and that's going on and this is kind of concerning, racist, homophobe. Right. And I'm like, but you haven't actually listened to anything I've just said, and you haven't come with other facts on the other side. But if you demonize someone's character, you stop listening to them. Yeah. If someone says, oh, Karina's a racist, she's such a racist. Anytime I'm going to open my mouth now talking about black issues, people are going to be like, but she's a racist, so it doesn't matter, right? You disqualify anything that person is saying. You're attacking a person's character. And I've noticed that the media has been doing that also with the convoy, right? What did they say? They didn't say, oh, they're upset. Oh, they're talking, you know, they don't like the government. No. What they said was they were racist. Right? The first day, they're racist. They're racist. Also, I've been there every single day. I've never even seen that flag or Nazi symbols, and I'm Jewish. So if I would see one, I'd be pretty ticked. But I didn't, right? But it's still a great talking point. Oh, they're all racist. Now the convoy has just been, oh, they're all racist. And you don't have to listen to anything that they say because, oh, they're white supremacists. Even if it's a black man speaking. Right. It's a black white supremacist. Okay.
Yeah.
See how that logic works. No problem.
Yes. Yeah. Everything you said there was really true.
Well, because we like debates. I love debates. I love having open dialogue. And I have people that disagree with me all the time. Like my friend Keith, we would spend hours and hours talking about different subjects. And sometimes we did not agree. He didn't want to work for people because he's like, I don't want to owe anyone my livelihood. But I'm like, yeah, but you kind of have to. And he's like, yeah, but do you? And we would like go back and forth. But respectfully, because we're all allowed to have our own thoughts because we all have lived through different things.
Right. Yeah.
That should be how life works.
You know Ben Shapiro?
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Okay, he had he went on do you know Russell Brand?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
the one I was married to Katy Perry. Poor guy.
Yeah? How so?
Katy Perry's a wacko.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh.
100%.
I didn't know.
Like, love her music. Like, she's a great artist, but, you know, she's a little kooky.
Oh.
A little kooky.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. Well, so Shapiro went on Russell Brand's podcast a couple of months ago. I think it was around last summer. And, I mean, I don't need to tell you, they have very different ideologies, religious, political, you know, you name it. But the title of the video was Respectfully Disagreeing. Right? And it's basically what you said, you know, it's like, well, it's good to be able to have productive conversations without resorting to name calling, without resorting to straw manning the other person's arguments, right? So I feel like, again, that's also in short supply. And I feel like we need to learn how to have more productive conversations. There's actually a quote by Sam Harris that usually resonates with me. He says, everything from the maintenance of civilization to the moral progress of our species depends on a series of successful conversations, right? And I feel like the reason anyone should have any conversation, I mean, if there's any disagreement, is to converge on the truth, right? Collaborate with the person and just converge on the truth, however it manifests itself, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, instead of, like you said, demonizing the other person, it just doesn't get you anywhere worth wanting, you know?
Exactly.
I don't know. There's I mentioned straw manning, so it's a logical fallacy, and it's essentially attacking the person's character, like you said, instead of their argument. And there's actually a flip side to that, and I actually wrote about it on my blog at mypeculiarblog.com, and it's called steel manning, right? And basically, instead of making your opponent's argument as weak as you can, and then attacking that, right, straw manning, you try to make it as strong as you can, right? You articulate it in the strongest, fairest light possible. And I mean, this is, you know, you look at the conversations that Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris had, the live event that they did a couple of years ago. That's what they did, right? Because they're trying to get to the truth. Exactly. They're intellectually honest. They have good intentions, and that's what they're trying to do. And another example is William Lane Craig. He's a very, very smart fellow. He's got 2 PhDs.
Oh, wow.
And
Can't relate.
Have you heard of him?
No.
I think he's a Christian apologist or
there you go.
something like that. So I think he has 1 PhD in theology and 1 in philosophy. And he's a very enthusiastic speaker. And so he went on Ben Shapiro's Sunday Special a couple of years ago, and Shapiro basically asked him, what are the strongest arguments for the existence of God? And Craig studied cosmology, and so he's very knowledgeable when it comes to science and philosophy and theology and how they all kind of just mesh together. And so he gave his arguments, right? And then Shapiro asked him to steelman the other person's argument. And he was able to do it. And I think, even if you don't agree with what the other person has to say, just being able to formulate the other person's argument in a way that's fair, like that, I mean, it's hard. First of all, it's not easy to do, but it actually shows that you've made an effort in listening to what the other person's trying to say, that you've considered their argument. And, if someone can't do that or won't even try, you might start asking serious questions about their intentions,
Yes. But I think emotions come and kind of take that away from us because, when I look at people who are debating, like, I watch a lot of Steven Crowder. Here's my babe, my boo. Like, of course he goes a little hard sometimes, but I still love him. But my favorite things to watch about him is the Change My Minds, because I feel, yes, okay, he's got a binder of information. Don't get me wrong. It must be difficult sitting down, but he's so kind. Anytime you see him like sitting down, he's just so genuinely kind. He's like, I'm really trying to have someone change my mind. Like, give me your arguments, like, especially if you sat down, you should be like decently like knowledgeable. And then if my facts end up changing your mind, okay, then maybe you can go and, kind of think about it. But people get so heated and so emotional. And we live in a society that tells us that everything should be based off of your emotions. Oh, you feel this way? Then go this way. Oh, that feels good? Then do that. Like, we don't go off of discipline anymore. It feels great to eat a piece of cake. But if you're eating a piece of cake every single day and you gain 10 pounds, well, I can promise you that the gaining 10 pounds is not going to feel great. You're going to feel sluggish. But what are you going to do? You're going to keep going because you're like, oh, whatever, it feels good to eat, or it feels good to sleep with 500 people, or it feels good to get drunk every single night, right? We're going so much on our feelings instead of being like, oh, okay, you know what? No, maybe I should go on my rationality. And so when anyone argues, they're always going off of emotions. Oh, I feel this way. Or you're denying who I am as a person.
Right.
I'm not. I'm just trying to talk to you. And if you can't take an argument for an argument's sake and not put yourself into it, there's an issue. Like, people can talk about Christianity and I won't necessarily put myself right into it just because I'm a Christian, right? You can talk about, I've heard many people be like, religion has destroyed the world and it's the worst thing ever and I'd never be a Christian. Okay, no problem. Why is that? What did you go through? What happened? Right. I'm interested in actually knowing the other side. I'm not just going to be like, well, you deny me my existence. Like, no, I'm a Christian. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you have to be. That doesn't mean you have to agree with me in any way, shape, or form. Right. We can still coexist.
Yeah. We can still treat each other with respect.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So I mentioned Robert Anton Wilson earlier. He had a pretty big influence on the way I think, and I actually wrote about him on my first blog post. But he's basically, his whole life, the philosophy that he's been trying to kind of encourage people to live by, it's called model-agnosticism. So usually when you hear of agnosticism, you hear it in reference to God, right? So if someone tells you they're an agnostic, basically means that they don't know if there is a God. They don't think it's provable, right? But he actually took it one step further, and he said, listen, you should be an agnostic with respect to everything. Everything, right? Sciences, jury verdicts, conspiracy theories, right? Economics, ideology, politics, just everything. Never believe anything with 100% certainty or 0% certainty. And I think that one of the biggest problems in today's society is people are so certain of what they believe to be true.
Yes.
And, there's actually a quote from Wilson that encapsulates his philosophy quite well. I just want to read it to you. Belief in the traditional sense, or certitude, or dogma, amounts to the grandiose delusion, my current model, or grid, or map, or reality tunnel, contains the whole universe and will never need to be revised. In terms of the history of science and knowledge in general, this appears absurd and arrogant to me, and I'm perpetually astonished that so many people still manage to live with such a medieval attitude. So,
Agreed.
You agree with that philosophy?
I agree.
Yeah.
I definitely agree, because even in Christianity, so many people say, don't question it, don't question it. Question it.
Right.
Question it. You should be questioning it. God tells you to question it. And like, you should question everything that you believe in. You should question yourself almost every single day. My mom has always taught me that. Okay, time to self-analyze. I self-analyze all the time. My mom taught me to self-analyze since I was 5 years old. Oh, mommy, this happened at school. Okay, why do you think that is? Were you mean to somebody? Did you say this? Could it have come off as this? And it doesn't mean that you're always in the wrong. You could have been completely right in a situation. That doesn't mean you couldn't have changed something possibly. Like, I know with I don't know, TVA. As soon as they came around, I was very attitude-y because I knew they're liars. But could I have gone about it a different way? Probably. I could have given less attitude. I could have been the bigger person. I could have, there's always stuff that you can do to change that. So
yeah,
that's what I try to do.
Well, that's good. Yeah. One of the ways in which Jordan Peterson talks about God, I mean, there's obviously many ways to talk about God, and sometimes trying to define a concept too tightly, you lose something. I am what I am, right? I think. And one of the ways in which he talks about God the most, from what I've been able to understand, is as an abstract moral ideal. Right, so it's that thing that sits atop the hierarchy of values, and that's the ideal that you're always kind of striving towards. And there's a line that he said at some point that I thought was really deep and wise. He says, the ideal recedes as you approach it. Right? So you're always trying to get to, your perfect self, your best self all the time, but you always fall short, and there's always room for improvement. And, if more people thought like that, maybe we wouldn't be where we are today, but it's, just humility and goodwill and wanting what's best for you and everyone else around you. I think that's really important.
Well, that's why I always loved Christianity, because I always said, I'm not Christian because I'm perfect. I'm Christian because I can admit that I'm not, and that I need a savior because I can't do it by myself. So to me, that's what Christianity is. And so many people are like, but you have to do this, you don't have to. No, I don't have to do anything. I have to ask for forgiveness because I messed up. And I mess up every single day. And so all I can do is, you know what? I'm going to do this for my father, because, Father in heaven. But I always think to myself, how would I make my mom happy? Like my mom personally, right? Well, I would want her to be proud of me. And how do I make my mom proud of me? Oh, okay, well, I'm going to do nice things for her. I'm going to clean the floors. I'm going to, clean the dishes. That's going to make her happy. I'm going to tell her how much I love her. I do the same thing with God. I do, okay, God, what do you want me to do today? Who can I help today? Who can I bless? And who can you help me bless? And when I do something, I'm like, I'm doing it for the glory of God. And that's it. But I know I can't do it by myself. I know I can't. And people that say they can earn their heaven, I know I can't. I would not be able to.
So what does the glory of God mean to you exactly? To someone who's not familiar with those terms or those ideas.
Yeah, like glory of God just means to praise God and thank him for what you have. And to me, the glory of God is just like his love for mankind. I think for so many years, we've had this light of God as, like you said, this all-knowing, of course he's an all-knowing being, but like this perfect sitting on a throne kind of judging people. I don't have that vision of God. I see God as a complete ball of love. And it doesn't mean that, when we look at justice too, a lot of people are like, but what about justice? What about this? What about that? Okay, yes, exactly. And if you love your children, you're going to have justice for them, right? So for me, this glory of God is the love that a lot of people have a hard time accepting, because they're like, oh, he just wants to judge me. No, it's the opposite. He doesn't want to judge you. He just loves you for who you are. And so that's why when I say the glory of God, I'm like, what? When people look at me and they're like, oh, what's different about her? Why is she so smiley? Why is she so joyous? Yeah. Why is she so happy? Why does she care about me when no one else cared about her? Why does she sit down with me for 30 minutes and talk to me? right? And I'm like, well, I'm a Christian. That's my difference. I have the joy of the Lord in me because I love God. And I'm happy. I wake up in the morning and I'm happy because I have breath, and I'm like, thank you, God.
Right. Yeah. Just being alive is a huge privilege.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you, like, it's always reminding you to be thankful to God of everything that you have. The little things, the big things, like things that you might think are little are huge to others.
Yeah.
And the more you look at that, you're like, wow. And sometimes I just leave, like I had like a good coffee and I gave my mom a hug and I was like, wow, I have a mom who loves me so much. I just had the most amazing coffee. And then I ride into work and I'm like, okay, you know what? We're going to have a day. Doesn't matter what happens. We started off on the right foot. Let's do this. So that's how I live my life.
I think it's a very good way to live.
Yeah, I try. You know, it doesn't mean life doesn't get hard. Like, I'm not living in this fluffy little bubble that nothing ever happens to me. Of course, things are going to happen to me, but you take those challenges and, like I said, you self-reflect. Okay, why did this happen today? Or what do I have to learn from it? Because we're always learning. If you think you're done learning, you've stopped living.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, I think I was hearing your mom talk last weekend. And she was basically, or one of those times that I saw her.
Little shindigs.
Yeah. And, you know, she was basically talking about how she would get really, really hateful messages, like on Facebook, say. And she would just, instead of bringing herself down to her level, she would just kind of try to be a loving person, send them love. And I think that's all you can do ultimately. You know, you just be your best self all the time. And if someone's ready to reach you at that level, if they're at that stage in their psychology, say, they're going to get there. But all you can do is just kind of lend them a hand and, you know, invite them to where you are. You know, it's not easy, you know, not defaulting to those negative emotions, but, you know.
It's worth it. It's really worth it. And I think the most beautiful thing that I saw at the convoy, I was there on the Friday before the police started marching in, and people were putting roses at the feet of these police officers. I saw a grandma who's crying in front of them. And then I was in front of them. For people that can't see me because this is a podcast, I'm like this little blonde, spunky-eyed little mini thing. And I was just standing in front of them, talking to them, being like, listen, I'm only here for my kids. Like, you know, like not my kids personally, but like the kids that I work with. And people were literally handing out envelopes of love in front of them. And then when they started pushing, we were like holding hands, singing "Oh Canada," waving flags. And these images that circulated across the world are why people are standing up now. Because they saw... They're literally standing, they're not doing anything. No one punched a cop. No one did anything wrong to them. We're trying to give them hugs. I think there's actually a video on a Saturday that a cop finally gave a hug to somebody. But we had told them, we're like, give us hugs, we love you. People were running around with hearts and saying, we love you. And that's why when people are like, oh, I heard someone threw something, I don't know where they saw that. And the thing is, people say, oh, the line was big. It's not that big. I could see from the end to the other end. Like, it's not hard to see everything that's going on. We had songs playing in the background. It was so loving that it was, when we saw the police just advance or when they put the horses through people, it was just such an amount of cruelty that is not understandable unless you see it with your own eyes. And I believe those images and what happened are the reason why people are starting to wake up and be like, oh shit. You know, all those people that are saying like, oh, just go home. It really doesn't matter. It wasn't like they told you to leave. That's no problem. I don't mind them telling me to leave. I was ready to get arrested.
Yeah.
I was ready. I was like, listen, I'm going to put both my hands in front of me. I will do anything. Like, I don't mind. If you want to use the law and you want to arrest me and charge me with whatever, you have to find a charge, but you want to charge me, I have no problem with that. I respect the law. That's why I want to become a paralegal. But as soon as you put your hands on people when they're putting roses on your feet, where are we?
Yeah.
Where are we as a country? Because it's quite a scary thing. And people that say, well, they warned you, it doesn't matter. I promise you, if it would have been a white police officer and a black man and they would have done the exact same thing, Black Lives Matter would be having a fucking kniff shit over this. And there was black people, but yet no one wants to talk about them, right? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. And now every single video that was posted, like of the elderly indigenous woman who was part of the Mohawk tribe who got stampled on by a horse, you cannot find it on Facebook. It's not misinformation.
Right.
It's a legit video of a woman getting stampled and crushed by a horse. You can't make that. I can't digitalize a lady going boom. Like, I can't do that. I wish I could. That'd be cool, but I can't.
Yeah, so they kind of have to hide videos like that because it goes against the narrative that we're trying to sell people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we still want to act like, oh, you're lucky that you live in Canada and not Ukraine. And do I feel bad about what's going on in Ukraine and wars? Absolutely. But there's some in Pakistan. There's some in Iran, Iraq that we never talk about. We don't talk about these young women and their children who are not allowed to go to school. We don't talk about other places that are going through real shitty times. We never talk about North Korea and what those people go through. We don't talk about China and their systems. We don't talk about any of it. But yet all of a sudden, when I want to talk about a country that was once free is now turning into a very scary country, you should be grateful for where you live. I'm always grateful for where I live. I know what I have because I look at other countries. But that doesn't mean that I want to become the other countries. So that's why I'm going to stand up to keep what I have.
Yeah. And being grateful for where you are and questioning your government's measures are not mutually exclusive.
No.
Right? You can just do both and, there's no paradox there, I don't know. I don't think it's unhealthy to question your government. If
it
they're...
is healthy to question your government.
Yeah, exactly.
It is healthy, okay? Because these people are regular people. I don't know why we forget that. They're like you and me.
Yeah. They're flawed.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like, I could just imagine if someone comes and they, we see this in movies and we're like, oh, that could never happen. But it could. Imagine you get a picture of your kid and they're like, do this or else they die. Yeah, you might have security around them. Yeah, but it's still your child. You still have emotions, right? I'm not saying that's what's happening. It's not a conspiracy theory. I'm just saying that we try to act like, oh, I would know how I would act. I've heard so many people, if I was in Nazi Germany, I would have never hurt anybody. No, you don't know that. If you would have had a gun to your head and they said it's you or it's this Jewish person, I'm not necessarily sure you would have chosen yourself. Right? Because this is coming from the same people that almost ripped my head off because I wasn't wearing a mask in the store. Yeah. And who are ready, one person was holding up a sign that said, gas the unvaxxed. Wow. Like, you have to be at a different level to be saying shit like this. I've never said gas the vaccinated. My fiance is vaccinated. Like, it's not a big deal. You choose whatever you want to do. Right. But when you're saying gas the unvaxxed, you've gone another dimension here, my guy.
Yeah, well, that's what 2 years of dehumanizing people are going to do to you,
Exactly.
You mentioned the word misinformation earlier. I actually have a quote here that I want to read to you.
Yeah.
So there was stuff gets passed around, Telegram, Signal, there's groups, information networks, parallel information networks, right? And so anyway, there was this court case. It was a family court case that happened in Ontario. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Ontario, I believe. And I think the case was a father wanted to have his kid vaccinated. Mom was against it. What do we do? Who do we listen to? Kind of thing, And so there's one passage from that. I didn't read the whole thing. I read bits of it.
Because they're very long. Court cases are very, very long to read.
Yeah, I guess you would know.
I do know. They're very long to read.
All right. So this is a quote. And yeah, I think this really captures the intellectual laziness of the word misinformation, disinformation. So anyway, this is a quote. And is misinformation even a real word? Or has it become a crass, self-serving tool to preempt scrutiny and discredit your opponent, to delegitimize questions and strategically avoid giving answers? Blanket denials are almost never acceptable in our adversarial system. Each party always has the onus to prove their case, and yet misinformation has crept into the court lexicon, a childish but sinister way of saying, you're so wrong, I don't even have to explain why you're wrong.
So true. I don't know if it's a judge who wrote this, but if it is, bless your heart. Because I'm starting to lose it with the legal system. I'm about to lose my brain cells.
Yeah?
Yeah. People are getting arrested and denied bail because of mischief. I've never seen that shit in my life. What do you mean? Like, mischief was the type of stuff that you didn't actually get punished for.
Okay.
It was like a joke.
Right.
It was legit a running joke. It's like in the criminal code, but like another thing that's in the criminal code in Canada is if you eat ice cream, I believe it's on Bank Street on a Sunday, you can get arrested. Like, that's the kind of joke that, like, mischief is.
Okay.
Can you get arrested for it? Sure. But usually it was like a slap on the hands for, like, the kids that were, like, egging a house. Right? Like, you know, you're 17 years old. You're like, I really hate my teacher. And you go to their house and you egg their house.
Yeah.
They could get arrested for mischief.
But why ice cream on a Sunday?
I have no idea. We thought maybe it was like a religious thing, but there's actually no real explanation. Yeah. So don't eat ice cream on Bank Street on a Sunday. Fun fact of the day. I think the other one is like, don't drag a horse down York Street, which is in Toronto.
Oh.
Don't drag a dead horse on a Monday down York Street.
Okay.
But why would you do it on a Tuesday? I'm unsure.
Yeah, Tuesdays it's fine.
Tuesday it's fine.
Monday.
Sunday it's all good.
Sunday.
But Monday?
Forget it.
No, sir.
You're going to jail.
Well, yeah. So mischief is one of those. And now we're seeing people that were, you know, given mischief and who are being denied bail.
Yeah.
Hello. Also, we have 2 pastors currently in jail for preaching. Preaching the good news of the Lord. So any of my Christians out there, if y'all are listening to this, y'all need to wake up, okay? Because this goes far beyond anything else. Once your pastor starts to get arrested, there's an issue. And for all my Black Lives Matter folks out here, y'all need to start rallying, because one of them pastors was black, okay? Who was doing nothing wrong except for spreading the good word of the Lord and refusing to wear a mask. That's it. That's why he was arrested. You're welcome. Time to go get him freed. Thank you.
That was here in Canada?
They're both here in Canada.
Okay.
Yep. And they're both not white, by the way. Just to leave that out there if that's
Right.
really important to you.
I mean, it shouldn't matter.
It really shouldn't, but to some, it's the only thing that matters.
Right, yeah. If you're an anti-racist.
Yeah, exactly. If you're anti-racist, this is the case for you.
Yeah, so there was a video that was circulating. It let's see. You might have seen it. It's like 1 minute long, and it was at the House of Commons. And you had an MP, Colin Carey of Ottawa, who passed along a question from his constituent. And he basically said, listen, Klaus Schwab.
Oh, that was funny. And they just
So
like,
you've seen
no.
the video? Okay. All right. So for our listeners that haven't seen the video or don't remember, you had an MP in the House of Commons that asked the Speaker of the House. Well, he basically commented on the fact that Klaus Schwab, who's the president of the World Economic Forum, I believe he's the leader,
so.
and he basically passed along a question from a constituent and said, listen, this guy bragged a couple of years ago, it was in 2017, that he has managed to penetrate some of the world's cabinets, some of the world governments, to essentially promote his own ideology or the ideology of the World Economic Forum.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, could we at least know who those people are, you know, for the sake of transparency? And then, you know, while he was saying that, a guy went to the Speaker of the House, whispered something to him. And then 10 seconds later, the Speaker's like, all right, it was a really good question, but we've been having issues with the audio and the video. So he understood what was said, but there were audio issues. And then they just skipped over that, total shutdown. And then the next MP that spoke said, yeah, we really need to do something against the promotion of disinformation. The video of Schwab is on YouTube. You go on YouTube and you write Klaus Schwab penetrating government. It's the first video that pops up. It's not disinformation. It's not misinformation. It's real, right? It's the truth. But, you know, Schwab was saying, and this was in 2017, by the way. This wasn't last year. In 2017, he was bragging about having had penetrated half or more than half of the Canadian cabinet. And I think that's really worrisome, and just calling that kind of information misinformation is so dishonest, so intellectually dishonest. And, you know, if people did a little bit of research, I think they would realize how dishonest journalists and politicians really are. But
100%. Even Facebook right now, there's a court case going on, but it's a court case against the world. It's what is it called? The one that they did after World War II.
The Geneva Convention?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that. Anyways, it's very, very big. He's been working on it for around, I believe, 1.5 years now. Like, collecting data. And he's trying to show how, you know, basically the whole pandemic, not the whole pandemic, but most of it was fake, right? Like all the tests that came back positive, right. How they were set to a certain... Anyways, he's a very smart person. He can explain it very well. I cannot.
Do you know his name?
It's a German name. So it's like Rangenfester? I don't know.
Okay. We'll find the name and give it to our listeners.
Exactly. But anyways, he's in trial right now, and there was the whole beginning, and he comes out and he's reading a list of everyone who was involved. So, of course, Justin Trudeau, our beautiful prime minister, was right up there. Macron, who is the French prime minister, beautiful Macron, president, prime minister. He's something. He's interesting. And, of course, Klaus Schwab, so on and so forth, Bill Gates, all those people, of course, the famous, names. But he was going down, and his entry to this trial was so beautiful, and it was around 9 minutes long, and I shared it to my family. They all saw it. They're like, wow, this is amazing. We can't wait to see like how this progresses. A day later, it was taken off of Facebook.
Your dad talked about that. It was the Nuremberg trial, like 2.0.
There you go. That's the one. Yeah.
Okay, so it got posted on Facebook and taken off the next day.
The next day.
Wow.
Just gone. And you could not find it on YouTube, Facebook, nothing. And I thought it was really interesting that they had finally said all the names and that he was taking it to this entire court and how legit it was. And we're going to take it off of Facebook? Why? What is it that you don't want us to see? And to me, the more they take things off, the more I want to know.
You ever hear of the Streisand Effect?
No.
Okay. Barbara Streisand. She had a...
No, I'm sorry.
She had some sort of mansion or, some sort of like luxurious home that some journalist managed to take a picture of, posted it on the internet, and then she did everything she could to take that picture down. And because she did that, it got way more attention than it would have had otherwise.
Exactly.
Right? So that's called the Streisand Effect. And I'm always curious to think, how mindful the globalists are of this effect. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, you had David Icke, who's a fellow truth seeker, and his website basically got taken down for like a couple days. And then I was like, okay, well, his Twitter was still up, and he was like trying to fix the issues. But I'm wondering if too many people are silenced at the same time, if that's not going to backfire on them, and everyone's going to start waking up to what's actually going on.
Well, I think that's kind of what we saw in Ottawa. Right? Yeah. Like everyone being silenced and told you can't speak this way, and you I feel like there's an issue when doctors are coming out and saying I'm not allowed to practice what I am medically trained for.
Right.
Because I don't care what side you're on, I want to hear both opinions. You should have two opinions. When it comes to medical, it's a personal thing. I've never seen someone, go to a friend and then they talk the whole day, but then they diagnose me with something. But we're not the same person here. So how are you diagnosing people you haven't even talked to? Sus. A little sus.
Pretty sus, yeah.
Pretty sus. Yeah. But they definitely, I think they're all waking up at the same time. Like, especially in Ottawa when, I think we really saw it. I remember especially on the, first day, because it's like, wow. It's so amazing. But there were so many freaking people. You couldn't move. Me and my mom had to, grab each other and, kind of make, a little circle to try to get across the way. It was insane.
Right.
So many people. No COVID, though. But so many people. So I think it was kind of... The truckers definitely awoke a lot of people. People were like, okay, yeah, there's something wrong. Especially when they went to Ottawa and they looked at it. Especially when the media calls us racist and evil and hateful. And then you got there and it's like, are you hungry? Would you like something to warm up? And every single street, there was food that was offered to you. There was a guy making entire pizzas. Offering entire pizzas. There was inflatable bouncy castles for the kids. And then not only that, but every single trucker you talk to, you knock on a window and you're talking to a trucker and you're like, how was your life? Da, 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 da. Everyone was giving each other hugs. There was people walking around with free hug shirts. Yeah. The amount of love was just absolutely insane. And it didn't matter where you came from, what you did, what you didn't do, if you're vaxxed, unvaxxed, it did not matter. And people finally woke together, and I think that's where you saw we've been suppressed for so long, we are going to make noise now. So everyone who was like, oh, you've made your point, you can go home, I'm like, it's been 2 years that I've been stuck under you, not being able to express my opinion, being told that I'm evil and I'm gonna kill grandma because of the way that I think, and now you're gonna tell me to go home because you don't like honk honk. Piss right off. In the nicest way possible.
Yeah, with love.
Amen.
Yeah. I only went to the protest once with your brother. I think it was during the second week.
Shame.
Yeah. What? Why?
It was so good.
It was
Every day. My God. I was raving. Me and my mom were raving. It was my favorite night ever.
Yeah.
Was us dancing because there was like the stage and they had like literally like lights and everything. And it was like not super cold because the rest of the convoy, holy mother lovers, I don't do cold, and it was minus 40 and I was walking my butt there just to tell people that I love them. So like that's how intense it was. But this was a night that it was like maybe 0 degrees because instead of snowing, it was kind of raining. And the music was super loud, and they had told the truckers not to honk anymore. And so after 4 days of not honking and them still not coming to talk to them or even acknowledge their presence, they're like, fuck it. And the 4 first truckers decided to honk. And so they started honking again, and the music was going, and we were jumping up and down, and like the rain was falling in our hair, and it was just like this perfect moment of like happiness and silliness and just singing at the top of our lungs. And like that was like the bliss of this trucker convoy of like happiness, love, and so on. So when people try to tell me, oh, it was so evil and you don't understand. No, I understand. I don't think you understand that you have stopped this from happening because you're so afraid. I'm not afraid. So I'm going to live like this.
It was a very good story to share. Thanks for sharing it.
Thanks for having it. Yeah. But it was so meaningful that now we're going to get tattooed. Hold the line.
Oh, yeah.
So gotta hold the line.
Wow.
Yeah.
You and your mom?
Me and my mom. And then when we were talking about it at the little shindig, another one of the friends was like, oh, I want it too. And then I asked, and so she's coming with us too. And then my mom said it to another friend, and now she wants it as well. So we possibly could be 4 people getting the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hold the line.
Hold the line.
Just the words, or?
Yeah, in cursive. Hold the line. Because the thing is, hold the line is such a... Yes, it was very significant for the people that were actually holding the line, when we were in front of the line. It was very intense. But it's also, like, don't give up, because people will shut you down all the time, will try to tell you to shut down all the time. But you just got to keep going. Like, hold it. Hold your ground. Like, if you know it in your heart and you've done the research and you think something and someone just calls you a racist or a bigot or whatever they want to call you, don't just shut down. Speak up. Be like, no, that's not okay. You don't get to attack my character because of something that I believe or that's something that I do, that is not rooted in anything you're saying. And so it's like, hold it. Hold your line. Hold who you are.
Yeah, be true to who you are.
Exactly. And doing lovingly. Like, I think our hold the line was so lovingly. Like, you saw, like, one person apparently had put down some white roses in front of the police officer. So he's like, the next time you step forward, you know that you're going to step in front of, like, step on beautiful flowers. And that's just like a mental thing that it's like, you are going to step on something that I'm giving to you because you were ordered by a government who doesn't even like you or support you.
Right. Yeah, just following orders, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's what the Nazis used to say. I was just following orders.
Right.
I was just doing what I was told.
It goes back to trying to escape accountability for your actions, right?
Exactly.
Well, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah. It was this person. It was that person.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Sometimes it is you. And sometimes it's hard to look at yourself after.
Yes. Well, you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror every day and, go to bed at night, sleep with who you are. And, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some people have no issue being, evil right down to the core.
Psychopaths.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the word that springs to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sociopath, psychopath.
Right, yeah. That pleasant bunch.
Klaus Schwab. Oh, who said that? That's rude.
Okay. What do you think people, you can define people however you want here, citizens, families, government officials, or communities, what do you think people can do to prevent this kind of thing from ever happening again?
Oh, that's a good question. Make people accountable. So don't just sit there and wait and hope, oh, maybe this person will wake up. Oh, maybe one day the media is going to change. Oh, maybe one day our government's going to change. No. Stand up and actually do something. The hashtags, they're not working. okay?
Yeah.
Sitting at home going hashtag this, hashtag that, it's great. Don't get me wrong. You can get a momentum going. But that's not what's actually going to change.
Right.
Get up. Talk about it. Write your MPs, right? You have to look and speak out, and don't be afraid. I think that's the biggest one. Is we're living in a scared culture.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. If you know in your heart that it's right, don't be afraid to stand up for it. Like, I knew when these vaccine passports were coming in, I was like, this is a little too familiar with me and my ancestors. Okay, this is a little. My ancestors are Jewish, by the way. You know, it was getting a little familiar up in here. So did I just sit down and go, well, you know, it doesn't matter. I'm going to take my jab. Sounds good. Let's go. No. I said no. No, thank you. And was I not allowed to go to a restaurant? Sure. I had 2 birthdays in lockdown where I couldn't go anywhere. I have been denied to travel. And traveling was one of my favorite things to do. Right? There are things that I got denied because of a quote-unquote choice apparently that I made. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it over and over and over again and keep the people that are doing it accountable and making people see when you start segregating people and making one person better than the other, there's an issue.
Yeah.
And hopefully more people will see it. You know, some people are really great. And I think also coming together with all of our, with everybody's collaborations, I guess, or specialties. You know, we had people that were really amazing photographers, and the pictures that they took spoke 1,000 words and videos.
Right.
But then there were also people who were very good with their words, and they can talk and rally a crowd together. Like if we looked at Pat King, you know, he had 20,000 people watching him, 30,000 people. Why? Because he was good with his words. He was good with rallying people. And then you had the caregivers, everyone who was walking around and giving food and giving blankets, and, you know, every person has a role, and we need to work together with those roles, and that's how we make things change. So don't be afraid to be yourself and to know your role and to be proud of it and to get up and go do it. Just get out of your house, really. Go see the sun. It's great. It's a good time. I promise. It's not scary. It's not the apocalypse yet. It might be one day, but it's not right now.
All right. Well, it's probably a good place to end it.
Yeah. It's not the apocalypse.
Go get some sun, you know?
Yeah, go get some vitamin D.
Well, Karina, listen, I don't think I could have asked for a better first guest on my podcast. Thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you are one of the few sane voices left in an insane world.
I hope so.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to see what kind of change you can do with your studies in the long term. I think you'll actually make a difference, and just keep walking the path that you're on, and I think you'll achieve great things.
Thank you. I'm excited for when your podcast becomes huge, and then I'm going to be like, yeah, I was there the first time. Thank you so much. Like, I'm not like famous, but like I'm kind of famous.
Yeah.